Sally and I are going to take a look at the papers. We're going to look at which stories are making headlines around the world. Many of the papers are looking at the aftermath of last week's attack in France. The headline of the French paper, Le Figaro, is La France debout. France stands. Britain's Independent refers to the well-known motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, meaning liberty, equality and fraternity. And The Guardian has two striking images on its front page. The eyes of editor Stéphane Charbonnier, who was killed at the Charlie Hebdo offices on Wednesday, and a picture of Angela Merkel and François Hollande comforting each other.
Gulf News reports that the European Union plans to tighten borders and share intelligence to combat the threat of terrorism following the events of last week.
The international New York Times looks at President Hollande's popularity, reporting that in coming weeks he and his government will be forced to confront painful questions about intelligence.
Credit rating agency Fitch downgraded Russia's credit rating to BBB-. That's just one notch above junk status. That's in the Moscow Times today.
The Daily Telegraph reports that UK FTSE 100 pharma group Shire is buying US biotech company NPS for $5.2 billion.
And according to South China Morning Post, car shows in China could look very different in the future. Organisers of the Shanghai Auto Show are considering getting rid of the well-known scantily clad car models. And they're usually female.
They're usually female, yes. We're not too upset about them being got rid of, I think. Joining us is Cornelia Meyer, who's CEO of MRL Corporation. Lovely to have you
Morning,
with us, Cornelia.
Good morning.
Not surprisingly, all the front pages with these amazing images of what, more than 3.5 million people who gathered in France all over to mark solidarity, unity. Your reaction to just seeing this outpouring of unity?
Oh, it's amazing. It's France at its finest. I mean, you know, this unity, having all the religious leaders walk together. You know, from all the sort of walks of religious life, walking together and sort of, you know, defending tolerance, fundamental rights, and rule of law. So this was quite. Good, and also seeing many of the European heads of state or senior politicians going and rallying with the French. That was quite outstanding.
It was outstanding, and it was happening in other cities around the world as well. London, Berlin, Boston. I knew people gathering in London, you know, all sorts of
everywhere.
People,
I mean, there was
desperately wanting to show that
solidarity.
That they were standing with France as they try and move on.
And it was very touching also to see Montpellier, which is a city which is, you know, has the largest Muslim population and the largest Jewish population in France, also having a very, very big march.
So very moving and poignant day on Sunday, but now it's a new week, and it's the week after, and the EU is looking to tighten borders, according to Gulf News, to counter any future attacks. In a way, we kind of knew this, didn't we? I would imagine, you know. Well, the UK government are talking about that.
But you know, we knew we would be tightening borders, and this has been long coming. But mind you, you know, this was, as was written in one of the papers, this was an attack from within. You know, it's an attack from citizens of the country. So it's different than 9/11. It's different than many other attacks.
I mean, when you see the pictures of people gathering, what was also interesting is that the EU interior ministers actually met on Sunday. They were meeting while this was going on to discuss these additional members, particularly to address the flow of so-called foreign fighters between Europe, Syria and Iraq. And these are the questions that are going to be brought up now, aren't they? Practically, what can be done and what needs to be done now? Stop talking about it, do something about it.
Yes, we need to do something about it, but we have the right measures. I mean, on your program yesterday morning, the former security minister, Admiral Lloyd West, said, you know, we shouldn't strip people of nationalities. We should let them back in. We shouldn't refuse them at the border, because that's how we get the intelligence, the information. It's a very, very hard subject.
And the international New York Times looks at how the horrors of last week, it says, has brought out the best in François Hollande, the president of France, because prior to this he was seen as very weak, indecisive, a leader that was flagging very much so in the polls in France, whereas last week he seemed to rise to the mantle.
Well, he was very statesmanlike, and he kept his calm, and he was calm, he was deliberate. He organized all these other foreign leaders to rally with France. So he was doing a very good job as a president. The question is always, after such incidents, you usually see countries rallying behind the leaders. Remember George W. Bush after 9/11, the country rallied behind him. The question then is, what will happen, 4 months later, 5 months later? Because as you rightly pointed out, we now need to move on and see how we combat these sort of incidents. And he may have to take some unpopular measures.
I mean, we mentioned on The Guardian there was a picture of Angela Merkel and François Hollande before the rally comforting each other. And it's impossible, I think, to not appreciate that everyone has some emotion here and a great deal of distress over what's happened. But when there was so little faith and so little trust, perhaps, in François Hollande before this awful incident. I mean, it says in here, in the International New York Times, he was the most unpopular French president since World War II. It's pretty easy to go back to that, isn't it? Those feelings of resentment, and when the economy rears its ugly head again, when all this has died down.
It's very easy to go back to it. It's very easy to go back to it. So he now has something to work with in terms of popularity. But he has little time to seize the moment, I think.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories now on other front pages, other issues in the other countries. Moscow Times, the issue of Russia's situation, where it stands as an economy with oil prices continuing to slide dramatically and, of course, Western sanctions still in place. It looks at the fact that it's near junk status in terms of credit rating with one agency, Fitch. Give us your take on the year ahead for Russia.
The year ahead for Russia is economically pretty grim, because you see that it's BBB- with Fitch. The other two big agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, also have them on an advisory trajectory going downward, and that's very important. If you need to raise debt, your rating will tell how much you have to pay. Oil prices are low. You have an economy that's basically based on oil. 70% of exports are oil and gas, 50% of the budget come from oil and gas, and you have the sanctions. So they really have to work hard to get themselves out of the sanctions and also to start diversifying the economy. I think that's the one thing that Putin really missed out on. While the going was good, was the time to invest and do more manufacturing and other things, so you wean yourself out on that single dependency on oil.
Shire paying, what, $5.2 billion to buy US pharma firm NPS. Good to see some biotech deals like this in the market happening.
It's very good to see, and it's when you look the last 6 to 8 months, you saw all the big pharma companies do quite a big bit of M&A. You saw
they tried.
Novartis.
Yeah, or they didn't pull off, did it?
Some of it didn't, but you saw Novartis really starting to specialize on certain fields. You see Roche trying to do the same.
Pfizer tried to buy AstraZeneca, but
that didn't work. But you see that there is that space at this point is very hot for M&A. So I think this year we will still see quite a few pharma M&A deals.
Now, you've worked in Asia, you worked in Japan for a while, and this is an interesting story. South China Morning Post, Shanghai may ban sexy models at their car shows. And I have to say, whenever we sort of cover the Shanghai Auto Show, and we do on World Business Report, you are struck by these beautiful young women who are quite scantily clad.
Yes, and as I said, as a woman...
You're not looking at the cars, are you?
No, you're not. I mean, I guess the women may be looking more at the cars than the men.
Are you surprised by this move?
I'm actually surprised, but I'm positively surprised. I think it's very good. But the car companies want to sell cars, so they will do whatever they feel they need to do.
With the assumption that it's men who are mostly attending these car shows who are going to buy the cars.
Yeah.
So putting scantily clad women, mostly women.
Yeah,
I've not
I haven't seen male models.
You're covering the Detroit Motor Show.
We are indeed.
Does it have a similar kind of ethos when it comes to showing off their wares?
Well, you see models with cars,
But they're less
But it's
scantily
not,
clad.
it's not on the same scale.
And I think they're
The
less
Shanghai
scantily
Mode
clad.
Show,
Yeah, there's also
it's
Geneva.
really,
They're less. They're stunning, but they're not scantily
A bit
clad.
more demure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bit more
well,
modest.
I think we're all fans of the cars being used to sell themselves more than the women, hey?
Absolutely.
Indeed. Cornelia, it's lovely having you with us.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Sally and I will see you very soon. Do have a lovely day.
Bye-bye. See you soon.